Right, good morning everybody, or I guess wherever time you are. Perkins Bacon, my goodness me, what a wonderful name that is in the world of philately. They are probably preeminent in actually starting off the way the world goes. So today we're in the Spink Auditorium at Virtual Stampex, and we're going to talk a little bit about the archives and what the custodians of that archive, which is the Royal in London, are trying to do to actually make it available to everybody else. So to kick off with who is Perkins Bacon and why do we have what we have? Well, Perkins Bacon were Americans. They came over here in 1819, and the whole company was originally founded in Philadelphia by a chap called Jacob Bacon and his son-in-law, who was Joshua Perkins. They have some gorgeous engravings, and this is a letterhead from a bit later on in their life. And you can see here the directors at the time were a chap called John Hubbard, who was actually president of the Royal. It is a very incestuous arrangement we have with Perkins Bacon, and lo and behold, this was a great delight when we discovered this. Our new headquarters in Abchurch Lane is just a few doors away from Perkins Bacon's final office. It is a very small world indeed. Perkins Bacon were not stamp printers. What they were was security printers, and basically they started security printing in the UK in 1828, and of course they're most famous for penny blacks. I'm sure it's a well-known quiz question answer, who printed the penny blacks, and the vast majority of philatelists will get that right. But, and this is the big but, adhesive postage stamps formed a tiny proportion of Perkins Bacon turnover. Their main business was banknotes and cheques and all sorts of other miscellaneous security printing jobs. And of course they were in commercial combat with De La Rue, who basically won over in the second part of the Victorian era as they started doing more cost-effective production techniques. The Royals got a vast amount of material, archival material from Perkins Bacon Archive. Perkins Bacon actually finally collapsed in 1935. That was the original company, at least, where they didn't quite know what to do with all of their wonderful archives. And there's a London dealer at the time called Charles Nissan who actually acquired it. And by a combination of donation and appeals for membership to help us out, the Royal actually then acquired all of the material. And it has been cherished ever since. So it's been the thick end of 100 years now. And this is a photograph from the Royal's basement. And unlike many basements in London headquarters buildings, this is absolutely pristine. It is in archival quality. There's no dust, there's no damp, there's no extremes of temperature, etc. It is loved and cherished. And these are the categories of the archives. So you can see it covers the vast majority of Perkins Bacon commercial areas. And these are just the areas where we're going to be trying ultimately to actually digitise the whole lot. That is our goal. A long, long way to go, but we have made a start. And we found some friends to help us, which is what you're going to be learning about today. The archive isn't just printing. I mean, there's things in there as well. This is a sheet of paper. It's actually quite large. You can't always tell scale. And what this is was, I don't know if you can see it, but it starts off AA, AB, AC, AD, etc. And this was the instructions. We think it's in Roald Neal's hand. And he went back to Perkins Bacon saying, this is how you put the corner letters in the sheet of penny blacks. And this is part of the Perkins Bacon archive, and it is absolutely unique. Splendid item. And this one is actually one of my personal favourites. It's the, in effect, the order for the first stamps in the world anywhere. This is a postage stamp warrant. It's dated 15th of April 1840. And it says, here are Perkins Bacon, this is your authority to go and print some penny blacks. And essentially this was, think of it as being stapled to the corner of a pile of watermark paper. And it says, here, I'll go and turn this pile of paper into penny blacks. That's what these warrants are. And the Royals got a great big pile of these warrants. And again, they're primary archives, which is what this is all about. So, what we're going to focus on for the next 20 minutes or so is what's known as the engraving books. The engraving books, and there's a photograph of them. The more astute of you will spot that the 17th one was actually photoshopped in when we took the photograph. Only 16 of them were to hand, so we added the 17th one a bit later. But that is the original. They're actually about sort of A5 size, that sort of size, and obviously over the years they're all different covers and sizes. 1828 is the earliest one. 1935 is the latest one. So it covers the entire period of when they were doing security printing in London. And I have to say that they're pretty readable. You know, many of these archives are very, very faint or carbon copies or whatever, but these engraving books themselves are absolutely splendid. And the bottom bullet point here is really important. They are absolutely a primary source. Those of you who've ever tried to write a book, you know that please don't rely upon a secondary source of somebody else who read the archives. If you go back to this primary sources, you can't go wrong, usually. So this is just the first one is 1828 to 34, and this is what they look like. Again, the scale roughly A5. Sorry for Americans, that's how big is A5? Is it 15 centimeters tall, something like that, 6 inches. Right. Now then, I'm going to introduce you to Percy de Worms. Percy de Worms was, in effect, the first archivist of the Perkins Bacon archive. And between 1935 and when he sadly died in 1941, he actually made copious notes of everything to do with postage stamps in Perkins Bacon archives. And these books are brilliant, apart from the typos that are in them. And if you go back to the engraving books, for example, there's one wonderful typo that I actually discovered probably about 3 or 4 years ago when I was comparing the primary source back to de Worms' manuscript. And it's been there for 50, 60 years, but nobody has spotted it. So a great example of why you really must go back to the primary sources if you're going to make definitive statements in research articles. It took a long time to get this published. Essentially, it was all down to the Second World War, and it was a difficult thing to do in those days. But it is a brilliant précis. And if you want to collect any of the colonial countries, or indeed any foreign countries which Perkins Bacon printed stamps for, this is the place to start. And there's a massive but there. And this is really the focus of what we're talking about. It doesn't talk about anything other than adhesive postage stamps. So if you want to collect revenue stamps, or if you want to collect banknotes, or if you want to collect cotton reel labels, or you want to do family tree research into which business cards they printed, you're not going to find the answer other than by going back to the primary sources. This is an engraving book page, and I don't know whether I love or hate de Worms, but he actually got a great big coloured crayon. It's normally red, but sometimes it's blue, and he put big ticks in the primary archive against items which he thought related to postage stamps. So if you're skimming through them all, then just look for the big red ticks. But on the other hand, he might have missed 1 or 2, and he certainly didn't pick out the revenue stamp items. Here's an enlargement of it, and what it says here, you can begin to understand the handwriting. There's a lot of abbreviations of this. So what that says is 9th of January, engraving, Commercial Bank of Scotland, brackets, steel, folio, check plates. So that's the sort of thing we were trying to do. So the project. Over the years, many, many different people have cherry-picked the particular aspects of the archive they are interested in. Very recently, we've had a very keen researcher who's been really helpful, a chap called Michael Harrison, who's been through looking at Indian revenue stamps, because they're not in de Worms' book. And he's made lists. But of course, even if you put all the lists together of what people have pulled out, you're still miles away from having a complete archive which is searchable. So what that doesn't do is make it available to anybody, nor does it ever attempt to be complete. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is hand over to Steve and Viv, who are actually going to just tell us from this starting position of saying, gosh, we want to make all this available to anybody, how we actually move forward in doing this. So I think Steve's going to pick it up first.
Thank you, Frank. All the engraving book pages have been scanned in by the Royal. normally with OCR scans, but for manuscript it doesn't work at all. Therefore, we wanted people to look at them and type in keywords for each page into a document. And that information will be used to create a searchable flipbook document on the web. We're providing an MS Word document with the left-hand side containing the image and the right-hand side available for typing keywords. Because a file of the whole ledger can be quite large, each ledger has been broken down into chunks of 10 pages. We're not undertaking a full transcription, just picking out keywords that can be used as finding aids by researchers. Phase 1 of the process might provide the before verification example you can see there. We then send them to RPSL volunteers who provide a check and, using their philatelic knowledge, possibly add value to what was written by Perkins Bacon, as you can see the red corrections. The catalogue on the Royal website provides a powerful advanced search which provides Boolean multi-phrase facilities. So we can see on that page that you can put in ands, ors and nots. When we've finished the keywords for the engraving books, we'll also add synonyms to the database, and then whichever name variant is used, it will find all entries, whichever one you put in on that page. We will also use this to add any abbreviations it used, although we'll try to eliminate these when adding the keywords in the first place. If we click on search there, it brings up search results. Looks something like this, and you can see at the top there that there are 28 hits have been found for the word Liverpool. Here's an enlargement of the text you could see down the right-hand side of the previous screen. And you can see that there are a couple of variations in the way that Liverpool Bank has been recorded. Bank of Liverpool is another favourite. So as we go through the keyword process, we'll try to optimise to make searching easier. Going back to the search results page, if you click on part, it brings up the detail. So here you can see the detail for the page, and down the bottom left there's a link. So if you click where the arrow is, thank you, Frank, and that has opened the page selected in the flipbook. And we'll talk a bit more about the flipbook later, but this is the end product that we're achieving. Going back to the search results page, if you scroll down a bit further, these quick links come up. So if you click on the icon relating to the Perkins Bacon engraving books, it'll open up a new page. The actual layout of this page varies depending on your screen width, so it won't necessarily appear in that position. This is the same information as we searched previously, and it's brought back 22 hits, and you can see one row for every page on there. Currently, we've completed 2 of the 17 engraving books, so that's 247 pages with about 3,200 keywords. And when the project's finished, we'll have about 10 times as many. At the top of the table, you can type in a phrase for filtering the results displayed below. Liverpool, again in this case, which has brought back 28 hits. You'll have to trust me, they're all there. Same as in the catalogue search. If we click on View Book on the left-hand side, in the first row, we'll bring up the flipbook in a second. But a tip on Windows machines, if you hold the control button down when you click on View Book, it opens up the flipbook in a new tab or window, so you don't have to repeat the search when you go backwards and forwards. Right, this is the flipbook, the same as we saw before. Down the left-hand side is the image of the ledger page. Sorry, I got told off, it's not a ledger page, it's a book. And down the right-hand side are the keywords. Note the magnifier button down in the bottom right. If you click on that, it opens up a handy little magnifying glass, and that can be moved around the image to make it easier to read the contents. There was also a zoom button on the previous page to enlarge the whole page at the same time. Returning to the previous flipbook page, there's a search box, top right. If we type in Liverpool and hit the return key, it shows all the entries in that book that matches any of the words entered. And then you can click on the page down the left-hand side, and the relevant text on the right-hand side is highlighted. Here's an example of searching on the Queen's Head, which is what Perkins Bacon called the penny black design. This is from the third engraving book, which is the next one to go live, but this was from a prototype flipbook that we created earlier. I'll now hand over to my wife, who's been coordinating the volunteers.
Hello. The Art Society has over 380 affiliated societies worldwide, most of them in the UK. It's concerned with exploring the arts and provides lectures, visits and tours for its members. It's also very active in conserving our heritage and making it accessible to the public. As an example, our volunteers work with libraries and museums on book conservation projects. We're also involved in projects to conserve textiles. Our projects usually are organised by local societies working with organisations in their vicinity. The organisations that benefit from our help can be as large as the National Trust's Hardwick Hall or a very small local museum. Over the last 12 months, however, volunteering work has ground to a halt. As a result, a project such as this with the RPSL is appealing because it can be worked on from home. Since the project began this January, over 30 people around the country have volunteered to help. They're working at different speeds depending on their own personal circumstances. However, the most prolific are turning around a batch of 10 pages every couple of days. They relish the... Sorry, Frank, I think you've gone a slide too far. Could you go back one, please? Thank you. They relish the variety as the entries are not just for cheques and stamps, but many other items for which Perkins Bacon carried out the engraving. There are references to newly emerging railways, such as the Warrington and Newton Railway Company, banks in the UK and around the world, the names reflecting the times, such as the Bank of British North America and the Chartered Mercantile Bank of India, London and China, and labels for so many things, exotic sounding perfumes for Houbigant Chardin, as well as more down-to-earth foodstuffs, such as Brown Windsor soup and Lazenby's fish sauce, and many, many visiting cards for the gentry. These are some of the volunteers' comments on the project. It's a mini geography lesson and a history lesson on how businesses functioned. Checking queries online puts life into the work. One volunteer discovered that Burlington was the old name for Bridlington, close to where he lives, but he hadn't heard the town referred to as that until he came across it in the 1846 engraving book. Another wonders about the lives of the clerks writing the entries and marvels at the consistent script and detail. And perhaps most poignantly, one lady says she's finding the work soothing and therapeutic in these strange times. We're currently working on the 12th of the 17 engraving books and will finish the work this summer. When circumstances permit, we look forward to re-engaging with our traditional projects in the outside world, but would also be interested in further home-based projects.
Okay, could you highlight me again now, please, Mark? Thank you very much. I think what I really must stress is this has been a fantastic partnership between the Art Society and the Royal. Without the Art Society, this simply could not have happened, and we're immensely grateful for Viv and her friends to actually get involved in this. But as Steve highlighted, there are definitely two phases to this, and Viv's TAS friends have been doing most of the heavy lifting in the transcriptions, rather not really transcriptions, they're keyword creation. But there's a vital step in actually verifying that from somebody who is independent of the first keyer, and adding the value about knowing that the 6th Perkins Bacon Queen's Head was really tuppence plate 1 or whatever is a massive requirement for us to make it really hum for philatelic searchers as well. What I'm going to do now is just talk through a few examples of what we've actually discovered since the project's actually kicked off. And what we've got here, I really struggled to come down with just 3. I'm only using 3 examples here. We could have come up with about a dozen of really quite exciting things that we found. We think they're exciting. So we found bank checks from all over the world, bills of lading, card plates for individual companies, and the old frizzles. Those of you who collect revenue stamps would be equally frustrated as I have been about the lack of de Worms's detail on revenue stamps. And of course, the old frizzles, the Ace of Spades playing cards, were in fact revenue stamps. Frontispiece of novels, Chris King, I know, was highly delighted to find a piece of artwork was the frontispiece of a book. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And share certificates, these are absolutely gorgeous if you can actually find the original items. And of course, go back to the engraving books, you can find the date of them. Commercial products, soaps and lotions, yeah, they're all there. This is an example of something where the engraving books actually came to life. Phil Harriman's based in Northern England. He put this letter into a magazine called Yorkshire's Post, which is the journal of the Yorkshire Postal History Society. And essentially what it is a letter postmarked the 7th of May, 1840. And sadly, it hasn't got a penny black on, but you can see it arrived in London the following day. And it's addressed to Perkins Bacon and Co. And Phil was just musing as to what it was all about. It is an entire, it's not an envelope. And it basically was the Barnsley Bank acknowledging receipt of 500 cheques, and also the proof of their next banknote, and saying, well, actually, we think it's great, but can you please make the number 5 a bit darker in the top corner? So Phil was just musing as to what this was all about. Now, when I read that, I thought, aha, I bet you I can find the engraving book entry for the Barnsley Banking Corporation note. So lo and behold, looking through it all, given the wonderful date of the 7th of May, which is really accurate information, we pulled this page out of the engraving books. And you can see, first of all, you can see go to the red tick, right, which is de Worm's annoying manuscript annotations. And it says, 1st of May, finishing the 4th plate of the Queen's Heads. Now, those of you who know your line of grace stuff know that the 4th plate of the Queen's Heads was actually tuppence plate 1. They go penny black, the VR, and the penny plate 2 are the first 3. And in fact, lower down, there's another one here, finishing the 5th plate of the Queen's Heads, which is actually the penny black plate 3 or penny plate 3. But of course, stuck in the middle here, we've got this entry for Barnsley Bank Company local, £5. And that is the creation of the Barnsley banking note, banking £5 note, right in this wonderful page of philatelic history. So if you start digging around, you can find a copy of the note. And this was on the Spink website, so thank you to them. And you can see this is actually the banknote, which was the subject of the letter which Phil Harriman was writing about. And, you know, I just love it when a story comes back together again. So we can date that very, very accurately. Old frizzles. Remember I said playing cards were really revenue stamps? What used to happen was that from early days of Perkins Bacon involvement in this country through to a repeal, I think it was 1863, there was a shilling duty payable on a deck of playing cards. It was essentially just a tax raising objective by the government. But it was very unpopular, because what used to happen was that any card manufacturer was allowed to print 51 of the 52 cards themselves, but they had to get a security printer to print the 52nd card. And that was always the ace of spades. And of course, any gambler could tell whether their opponent was actually holding the ace of spades or not, because it was slightly different colour or slightly different size or whatever. And this became rather unpopular with gambling, as you can perhaps well imagine. So the tax was hugely evaded. And you see, you know, duty 1 shilling, and that's just a revenue stamp as far as revenue collectors go. And all the books say that this card was circa 1828. But when was the card actually made? Well, using the wonderful system that Steve has designed and built, and Viv and her friends have actually transcribed, you can actually start searching on the word Hardy. And this is actually from the first engraving book. So this is actually live on the Royal's website now. You can repeat these searches if you want to. And if you search on the word Hardy, you can see Ace of Spades Hardy, and it brings it up. So then you click on the View Book button, and it brings back the page. So you can actually start looking at it. And right down the bottom here, it says 17th of December. This is 17th December 1829. Engraving Ace of Spades on steel from Hardy and Sons. Actually, the transcription says soap, but that's one of the things we didn't actually pick up. It will be changed, but this is actually live the day I took the screenshot. So is the word soap going to be searched for? Well, I guess it might if you do informatics. But when was the card made? We now know a precise date when the play was made. It was actually 1829, not 1828. Second example, another revenue one, the Guildhall consultation fee. These were revenue stamps which were absolutely gorgeously printed by Perkins Bacon. They were used to attach the legal documents in the London courts, and there was a very, very seldom used system whereby if you were meeting your lawyers and wanted a private room before you actually went before the judge, you could have it at a cost of 2 and 6. And again, you know, these stamps were sort of guessed by the pioneers writing all the books. It says circa 1892. Well, these are the Guildhall stamps, by the way. They're actually gorgeous. And this is a classic piece of Perkins Bacon engine turn background. And you can see if you just highlight the background of the stamp against the background of the engine turn example, you can see they're identical. It's a great history of how De La Rue did all their how Perkins Bacon did all their manufacturing of plates. But the Guildhall consultation fee, there it is. It's the 2nd of December 1891. Engraving Guildhall fee stamp die £0.5 crown. So we now know again a precise date when this plate was made, and that's not in any of the literature that's been published to date. So we're really looking for more people to get involved. Viv's got a good number of volunteers from the Art Society who are doing the basic keyword creation, but we desperately need some more people to get involved in phase 2, which is actually verifying the keywords. And after a while, you can actually learn the handwriting, but also looking for people to add any philatelic knowledge where they can to understand what it is people might search for in the philatelic world. So if we can add that to the notes, then it will make everybody else find things much more easily. So if you are at all interested in helping, we would love to hear from you. There's the contact volunteering at rpsl.org.uk, or if you can't remember that, then just drop me an email if you know me privately. What I will say is that the Perkins Bacon archive has got roughly a dozen classes of manuscripts, and the engraving book is just the start. You know, we desperately we would love to do the whole lot, but that's a very long project. It requires a huge amount of IT resource, a very large amount of transcription time, and it also needs a bit of money, which Chris King will ask for in a moment. So, any questions? That's the buzzword we got here. So if anybody's got anything they can add to this conversation, then I'll be delighted to hear from you. And that's me done. I shall stop sharing the screen. Back to you, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Frank. Thank you very much. That was very informative. I'm just going to reset the display here a moment. Right, everybody. I hope you found that very interesting. As Frank said, we'd now like to deal with questions. And people have already started to put the questions into the Q&A, and I'd like to start with the first of those. And actually, judging from this question, I'd actually invite Chris King to give an answer to this one. So I'm going to temporarily ask Chris, please, to unmute because he's currently muted. And I'm going to spotlight Chris. Chris, the question comes from Kevin Maunder, who asks, when normality returns, can members of the Royal inspect the original records?
Well, the short answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, one of the objectives of digging into this wonderful treasure trove of material is to make sure that members and indeed the wider public, we'd love to see banknote collectors and so on join us, find their way through the archives, because the more it's looked at, the more we will find. So yes, as soon as we're back to normal, please make arrangements with our head of collections, Nicola Davies, and please come in and see us. We'd love to see you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chris. And the next question, not quite sure who wishes to answer this. Next question is related to what you just said, actually. It comes from Robert May. And Robert asks, is there merit for banknote researchers to have the banknote denominations included in the keywords? Who'd like to answer that one?
Frank will have a go at that if you want. First of all, good morning, Rob. The answer is yes, of course it would be helpful, but I would imagine if you're researching Barnsley banknotes, you're actually really probably going to start searching on Barnsley rather than Barnsley £5, on the grounds that I would imagine, I don't know the answer to this, I would imagine there's probably only about a dozen entries for Barnsley in the entire engraving book portfolios. So my guess is that most researchers would actually go in at the higher level. The exception would be when you've got some very, very prolific banks who issue banknote after banknote after banknote. And it really comes down to the discretion of the original keyword creator. And then again, also down to the discretion of the Royal's verifiers. But of course, unfortunately, there are several ways of spelling £5. And you've got to be very cautious what you wish for here.
Thank you, Frank. The next question comes from M. Solpin, who's asking, where is located this RPSL book? So basically they're asking, where are these books located?
Yeah, shall I carry on talking? The answer is they're in the basement, in the secure area of the RPSL collections, and they are available through the Royal's charitable aim to anybody, any member of the public or members of the Royal, of course. And they can just come along after they made an appointment with Nicola, as Chris alluded to, and they can see the primary source. And they are wonderful. Alan Druce, many of you will know Alan Druce's books, which of course took him 4 or 5 years to write. And of that 4 or 5 years, at least 3.5 of them were glued to a desk in the Royal's archive. You know, the books he came up with are truly stunning. But of course, he only covers postage stamps, and he only covers 1840 to 1846. The archive is vast.
Thank you, Frank. One of the anonymous attendees asks, do you see this facility being translated into other languages in the future, considering how some of Perkins Bacon's work were for foreign countries?
gosh, that's something we haven't thought about. So that's one of the great benefits of doing Zoom sessions like this, is to actually stretch us. My short answer would be not in the first release of anything. The vast majority of the words which are being added to the keywords are actually proper nouns. So I don't quite know how the word Barnsley translates into Portuguese. I would imagine it looks a bit like Barnsley. So I think there's not a lot to be added by doing that. But I will certainly add it to the list of things to think about.
Can I add something to that? It seems to me that down the line, machine translations are going to be on us. Maybe not this year or next year, but sometime in the next decade. And I think machine translations are actually really improved into major languages anyway. So, yep, but there is a way forward, but my gosh, we've got such a long road to go down before we can consider that. Frank's talked a little bit about the volume of material. And really, I think in the first instance, we want to make sure that what we have is made available to the public. But the minute you can get a plugin that does machine translation, I'm sure that can be handled, but not just yet.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, Mr. Solpin, we did answer your question. Apologies that you missed the answer. Frank, would you just briefly reiterate where these books are, please? Unfortunately, Mr. Solpin was called away from his computer.
Yeah, sorry, I'll say it again. All of the Perkins Bacon archive, both the paper archive and the three-dimensional artifacts, are all held in the archives and collections at the Royal's headquarters at 15 Abchurch Lane in the centre of London. And any RPSL member, or indeed any member of the public, can make an appointment through Nicola Davies. Go to the Royal's website and you'll find the email contacts. And Nicola will be delighted to actually host a visit for you, subject to COVID.
Yes, thank you very much. Kim Stuckey asks, does this, Steve, this might be one for you. Does the search algorithm handle apostrophes, abbreviations, etc.? For example, you had Pinnocks and Pinnocks with an apostrophe as keywords.
The quick links search does not handle synonyms and probably doesn't handle apostrophes. I haven't tried it, but the full catalogue search will do so, but we're not going to put the synonyms in until we get to the end, when we know which ones we want to include.
Yep, thank you. That's a very important point. Jack Zhang comments that he's got a couple of letters to Perkins Bacon, and hopefully he will be able to find more information from those books that we've got. So yeah, thanks for that, Jack. Right, well, Jack's observation about the letters was the final question that I've had here. So I would say that we've concluded the Q&A session at this point.
Mark, is it possible I could just, Mark, could I just expand on one of the things that Steve's
yes, please do.
Steve's been rather modest here, and I want to just blow his trumpet a bit on his behalf. The main catalogue search engine that is on the Royal's website is incredibly powerful, and as well as the Boolean and not or type logic you can put in, this synonym tool is incredibly powerful. So, for example, you were searching for an article on French-censored mail, and there was an article in a magazine that was called France-censored mail. If you had synonyms turned on, then it would hit it. And most search engines don't do that sort of thing, but the logic which Steve has designed and built actually will find that sort of hit, and that's incredibly powerful. That's just one example. There are hundreds and hundreds of examples in there.
Yes, thank you, Frank. Actually, whilst you were speaking, we've had a couple more questions come in. Philip Ward asks, as new sections are issued for use, how will they be announced? Well,
Phil, if you start offering to help transcribe, they'll be announced a lot more quickly. That's my first point. And also, you'll be on the inside. No, seriously, we will obviously announce them on the Royal's website and through the London flat list when major sections get put up.
Right, thank you. And David Bradley has asked, is it known on what basis the plates, perforating and other equipment of Perkins Bacon were transferred to Sprague, I think you pronounce it, Sprague and Company in about 1936?
Not known by me.
Perhaps
I can only assume
one...
that Sprague actually bought the assets. The failure of Perkins Bacon in 1935.
Okay, I would recommend that if that's an item of interest, that you contact the Royal with regard to your question, and they'd be happy to help with the research. Nicola Davis is our head of collections, and to make a research appointment or indeed to raise a research request, you can email her and her team research@rpsl.org.uk, and they are hoping to restart the in-person research from the 21st of June, subject, as we know, to matters relating to COVID. There's a question also about this Burlington, Bridlington, where there are two spellings, are both used as keywords, was the question.
Wait.
Steve.
Yeah.
Or Frank.
Do you want to highlight? Yeah. Do you want to highlight?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay. A lot of people wouldn't necessarily know when they're putting the keywords in that Bridlington and Burlington were the same thing. They've just put in what they see on the page. But as in that particular case, what we will do is we will add that combination as synonyms. So whichever one they put in the main catalogue search, it will identify the entry. But it comes down to people understanding what is put on the page, and so the more they research and understand things, the better the quality of the results in terms of the synonyms that we can create.
Can I add something here, please? We've come across a lot of, for example, Indian place names, where Indian names have changed. So what we're either doing is putting them in as synonyms or putting in the modern name in brackets after the name that's used in the book. So whichever you're searching on, you will find, or you should find, what it is you're looking for. And Hemel Hempstead is sometimes spelled, the Hempstead part, sometimes with an A and sometimes without. So again, we're putting both either in the synonyms or as part of the keywords alongside the actual literal transcription from the script.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And we've got a question coming from David Rennie, who meant, and Frank, you may wish to answer this one, you may like to unmute, that, let me just do that. David's question is that the Bromley District Philatelic Society had a label featuring the Ace of Clubs produced in 1937 and apparently printed by Perkins Bacon. Would this appear in the record books? He mentions that it's featured on the cover of the first part of the history of the society, of the other Bromley District Philatelic Society, and of course we have a copy of that interesting document in the Royal's library. So what would you say to David about this Ace of Clubs?
I'm come off a slightly long run here, in so much as the Perkins Bacon archive does include everything that they, when I say everything, I mean everything they engraved between 1828 and 1935. So in the last week or so, we found some magnificent entries relating to publicity labels by Sandy Gibbons. We've also found some wonderful engraving entries of the plates for Congress of Great Britain dinner menus, and all these wonderful things have come out. I'm a little worried about the date of 1937 because Perkins Bacon, as in the company which printed the penny blacks, ceased trading in 1935. Now there was another company emerged which had got a very similar name. But of course, that is the company, Phoenix Company, which actually we do not have the archives for. So to answer David's question directly, if the plate was made prior to the collapse of the company in 1935 and printed by somebody else from the plate in 1937, then the entry would be there. But if it was printed by, sorry, if it was engraved and printed by the Phoenix Company, then we will not have it in our archive.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. The other question, you know, there's that question about Sprague and Co. Peter Coburn has reminded us all that they were also in Abchurch Lane. So as you were saying, Abchurch Lane was central to so much of this activity. Right, I am now going to draw a close on the Q&A. So thank you all very much for your questions and indeed for the answers that we've received. I should like to invite Richard Stock to unmute himself, and I know he wishes to say something at this point. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen everywhere. It's a very welcome opportunity for me to express to Steve, Vivienne, and also to Frank the sincere appreciation of the Council of the Royal Philatelic Society London for the very important and challenging undertaking which they are carrying out in digitising the Perkins Bacon collections. It not only highlights a major aspect of one of the facilities that's available to visitors to the Royal, both members and members of the public, that we hold these archives, but this is a massive job to be undertaken over a very long period of time and requires an immense amount of work. And I am extremely grateful for everything that they're doing to ensure that it's a success. Not only is it a work on behalf of the society, it's a work on behalf of the public generally, because we have two societies working together, doing different aspects of the work to a very high standard. It's very important because it goes back to the printing of the first postage stamps in the world, and to hear that the security printers who started business in 1828 in the UK, stamps was only a very small part of their business. We are fortunate to have the very large archive of their material, and it contains unique items: the warrant for the world's first stamps, the order. Now, there's no better receipt, I think, in existence than something that is quite as historically important as that. The Art Society has provided very wide resources in the shape of their volunteers, and they're specialists in conservation work of the type that we so need at this time. And I'm extremely grateful to the Art Society for everything that they're doing to ensure that this project is an undoubted success. The design and build is a key aspect of it, and I don't think we could have anybody better to undertake that. The initial design of it in particular than Steve, because of the vast experience he has in that field. I look forward to this being a substantial benefit to the Royal in the future, and we need to start thinking about how we're going to market this so that everybody gets the benefit from it that they need. Thank you so much for everything that you've done today, and I'm delighted to see that we had 98 participants to listen to this very interesting and really quite wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Richard. I'd like to invite Chris King to say a few words. I'm going to pass over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much. First of all, I want to say thank you to Richard. Richard's taken a very great interest in this project, and in fact in the collections in general. As President of the Royal, you actually are a very busy person, and Richard has made time to attend and see what's going on, and I'm grateful for that. It is, I think, one of the treasures of the Royal Philatelic Society. Yes, it's an important philatelic record, and yes, it's important in terms of banknote collectors and others. But it is a rare commercial record of a Victorian international business. And there are not many of these around. In all honesty, I don't know what we've got in the way of their accounts, but I'm sure there's something, and I'm quite certain that a forensic accountant could tell us why they went into bankruptcy in the mid-30s. But we've had these records for over 80 years. And when Ad Indusifon left us some money to preserve some of the volumes, we used that money to bind volumes and preserve them. But really, it was in 2010 when London 2010 made a profit and donated £10,000 to get this project underway in modern times in a digital form. And we started digitizing the records from the beginning. We took the earliest and started and went forward until we ran out of money. In addition to that, we've had some grants for conserving our volumes. We've had grants for digitizing volumes, but this is all the tip of the iceberg. There's a huge amount. There is a decade's work and more in putting this project together. So not only is money an important thing, but also the labour. And Frank and Steve in particular has put an immense amount of work into this. But other people like Michael Hancock and in fact Rob May, who appeared with a question earlier on, are also volunteering to help this project develop. And Alan Druce, who wrote this masterful piece of work on just a few years of the early printing of the first postage stamp, has shown the way. And that's a book which is as academically robust as anything you'll get from a university department. So this project involves conservation, it involves scanning, it involves transcription, it involves publication, it involves software development, it involves website development, and there's a great deal to do. And if you think you can help in any way at all, in practical terms, or in financial terms, or you can point us in the right direction for grant aid or other resources, we'd be very, very grateful. This is a great project. It's not just for philatelists. It's for, as David Beach would say, posterity. But it's for everybody who is interested in this field. And it is a vast field, and we are so privileged to have this set of records in our new building at the Royal. And they are very well looked after, but it's one thing to look after them, but the most important thing is to make them available to the wider public, to our members and other people's members. And this is what we need to be doing. And as I say, we need help in doing this. And if you are at all interested, you can contact me. I'm kingc@rpsl.org.uk, or use the research address and contact Nicola. So thanks very much for attending. I'm hugely pleased that so many people have attended. I'm immensely grateful for the Art Society's work, because here we are, we're demonstrating something that COVID has taught us. We're demonstrating interdependence of voluntary societies. And I think there's a great deal more to go in developing those links and those cooperative endeavours. So thank you very much indeed for attending. Thanks very much for the presenters. And as I say again, thank you very much, Richard, for taking such an interest and being so supportive. So thanks. Back to you, please, Mark.
Thank you very much, Chris. Totally echo all the things you've said there. Thank you. And as we're approaching the end of this, I think, ladies and gentlemen, it may actually be time to finish. So I'd like to thank you all for having attended. I hope you found it instructive and interesting. And if you'd like to get involved in with this in any way, you've heard how to contact Chris, and you saw on Frank's presentation how to contact Frank, etc. And we will also be available if you'd like to chat to us. We'll all be available at the Royal stand B2, on our booth on the chat. Do come along and chat with us, and we'll be delighted to chat further on this subject. So thank you very much. I'm now going to end this and wish you all a pleasant day. Goodbye now.